I'm Lorraine Mathers. I'm 72 years old, and this year I set the table for ghosts. Douglas passed away in April. Heart failure, sudden and quiet. One minute we were watching Jeopardy, and the next I was alone in a house that suddenly felt 5 times bigger. We'd been married almost 50 years. I still catch myself reaching for his coffee mug in the morning. It was my first Christmas without him, and I couldn't bear the thought of it just being me and the tree. So I made a plan. Just a small dinner. I invited Sean and Bethany. No pressure, just the 3 of us like old times when Sean still lived here, and brought home science projects that smelled like vinegar and glue. The week before, I made a grocery list on the back of an envelope and tucked it in my purse. I picked out a fresh pine wreath at Murphy's Market, even though the artificial one in the garage was perfectly fine. I told myself it was for the smell. But truthfully, I just needed something real. I started cooking 2 days early. The turkey was frozen solid, so I left it in the sink overnight. I made mashed potatoes from scratch and baked the cranberry orange bread Douglas loved. I even made Bethany's kale salad, even though I think kale tastes like punishment. On Christmas Eve, I pulled out the red sweater Douglas used to say made me look like a holiday postcard. It still fit a little snug in the shoulders, but I didn't care. I curled my hair the way he liked and even put on lipstick for the first time since his funeral. My hands shook a little while I was doing it, but it felt good to try. The house smelled like cinnamon and rosemary and oven heat. I played Bing Crosby from the little speaker in the hallway and lit the 2 tapered candles I usually saved for Thanksgiving. The china plates hadn't been used in years, but I set them out anyway. 3 settings. Forks on the left. Napkins folded like I remembered from when I used to care about napkins. By 2 o'clock, the food was ready. I set the rolls under a towel to keep them warm. The turkey was golden, resting in its pan. I poured sweet tea into the glass pitcher and tucked ice in the glasses so they wouldn't clink when I moved the tray. I even put little place cards at each spot. Sean, Bethany, Mom. At 2:45, I texted Sean. Just a quick see you soon. No reply. At 3 sharp, I sat on the couch facing the front window. Snow had started to fall. Not heavy, just soft little flakes that made everything look still. I turned the music down and checked my phone again. By 3:15, my stomach started to twist. I turned the oven to low, hoping the heat would keep things from drying out. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe Bethany's migraine was acting up again. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. That's what mothers do. At 3:30, the doorbell rang. I jumped up so fast I nearly knocked over the pitcher. My heart actually fluttered. I pulled open the door with both hands. But it wasn't them. Just a delivery driver with a padded jacket and a clipboard. He handed me a small envelope and walked away without a word. My fingers trembled a little as I turned it over. The handwriting was neat and loopy. Bethany's. Inside was a single note on cream-colored stationery. Lorraine's so sorry. Plans changed last minute. We're spending Christmas with my mom. Hope you understand. No apology. No offer to reschedule. No explanation. Just that. Hope you understand. I stood there in the entryway holding the card like it might bite me. Then I went into the kitchen, turned off the oven, and stared at the food. Everything still warm. The candles flickering. My lipstick still intact. I sat down at the table and poured myself a glass of tea. I tried to eat. I took 1 bite of stuffing and had to set my fork down. My throat wouldn't work. I looked at the 2 empty chairs across from me and felt something I hadn't felt since Douglas passed. I felt erased. Later that night, I scrolled through Facebook. I don't normally check Bethany's page, but something made me do it. And there it was. A photo of their dinner table. Long, full, plates already half empty, Bethany's mother in a red turtleneck holding a wine glass, Sean beside her laughing. The caption said, "Grateful for family and full hearts." I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I just stared at it. That was when I knew. They didn't forget me. They just left me out on purpose. That's worse. And that's when something inside me shifted. I didn't cry, not that night. But I turned off the tree lights, blew out the candles, and slid all the untouched food into containers. Every bite labeled and stacked in the fridge, except the cranberry bread. I left it out. I didn't know why. Maybe I just needed something to spoil, something to rot with me, because that night in the quiet hum of the empty house, I finally admitted something I'd been refusing to say out loud. They didn't need me anymore, and I was still here. I woke up earlier than usual. The house was still the kind of stillness that settles in when disappointment has had a night to settle. The tree lights were still on in the corner, soft and quiet, like they were afraid to draw attention to themselves. I didn't make coffee right away. I pulled on Douglas's old sweater, the gray one with the fraying sleeves, and stepped outside. The frost had coated the grass, and my boots crunched softly as I walked the stone path around the back. Douglas used to take this walk every morning, just a short loop around the garden to clear his mind. I passed the raised beds where we once tried growing tomatoes. Nothing had survived past July that year. Something tugged at me to check the corner where the old lantern hung from the post. I hadn't touched it in years, but it still tilted just a bit to the left, like always. And there, tucked behind it, was a weather-worn envelope. My name was written on the front. Just Lorraine. That was how Douglas always wrote it on birthday cards and sticky notes. I stood there holding it for a long moment before going back inside. At the kitchen table, I opened it slowly. There were just a few words written in his steady hand. "If you're reading this, open the left drawer of my desk. Use the key." That was all. I knew which drawer. Douglas always kept that one locked. I hadn't touched his desk since the funeral. I walked to the study and sat down in his chair. The key wasn't in the envelope, but something told me it was already waiting. I opened the top drawer, reached beneath the liner, and found it taped to the underside. It clicked into the lock with a soft snap. Inside, a small folder and a metal key rested side by side. The folder held a deed to a property near Traverse Bay. I had never heard of the street. I didn't recognize the address. The papers were in my name, fully mine. The cabin had been purchased 2 years ago. Douglas hadn't said a word. There was a handwritten note inside. "If the day ever comes when you feel forgotten, this is yours. You always belonged somewhere, even if they make you feel otherwise." I sat back in the chair and let it sink in. He had seen this coming. Maybe not the exact Christmas, but the slow shift, the missed calls, the quick visits, the way Bethany always looked at her phone when I spoke, the way Sean started saying phrases like, "We're busy," or "We'll try next time." He knew. The next morning, I packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, some snacks, a thermos of coffee. Douglas used to say, "Always bring something warm and something sweet." I typed the address into the GPS. The route took just under an hour, past the town through winding country roads lined with pine. It was snowing lightly when I pulled up. The driveway was gravel and half covered in ice. A small white cabin with blue shutters and a stone chimney stood quietly at the end of the path. There was no name on the mailbox, no sign on the door, just stillness. Waiting. The key turned easily in the lock. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and old books. It wasn't musty. It felt lived in, even though no one had been there for a while. Everything was simple but familiar. A quilt on the back of the couch. A basket of pine cones near the fireplace. A ceramic mug that looked just like the one Douglas used to drink from every morning. Photos lined the mantel. One of us at the beach laughing. One of Sean when he was little. Another of Douglas sitting on what I now realized was this very porch wearing that same gray sweater I had on. The kitchen was small, but the shelves were stocked. Coffee crackers, peanut butter soup cans, even my favorite tea. He had labeled everything with tiny stickers. The silverware tray had a note inside, just in case it said, "I don't want you looking for spoons when you're already tired." I walked into the bedroom, a twin bed neatly made, a pair of slippers beside the nightstand, a photo of me on the dresser. Not us, just me. One I didn't even know existed. I looked calm in it, strong, a little sad maybe, but standing tall. There was one more envelope on the bed, just a short note inside. "If the world forgets you come here. You were never forgettable to me." That was when the tears came. Not all at once, just slow, steady quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed holding the paper, and for the first time in a long time I didn't feel like someone left behind. I felt seen, protected. Douglas hadn't just made a place. He made a plan. A safety net for the day my own family chose to look past me. He hadn't said it, but he knew. He watched it happen in inches and prepared something soft to catch me when the fall finally came. I walked through every room twice that day. I touched the framed photos, opened the drawers, ran my hand over the lamp switches, and the wool blanket folded at the foot of the bed. It was all me. All of it. Quietly chosen and set aside. He didn't build this cabin because he doubted my strength. He built it because he knew strong people still need somewhere to land. And now I had mine. 3 days after I visited the cabin, my phone rang around 10:30 in the morning. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Greg Salter, Douglas's accountant. I hadn't heard from Greg since the funeral. He sounded measured, respectful, like he'd been practicing what to say. He told me there was something Douglas had asked him to hold on to. A trust. Private. In my name only. Douglas had started it 5 years ago. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one that had held untouched Christmas dinner just days ago. Greg said Douglas had moved over $500,000 into the account quietly. He never told me because he didn't want me to feel like it was a warning. But it was. It was insurance. Greg asked if I'd be willing to come to his office in town. We met that afternoon at a brick building above a bakery. The smell of warm cinnamon clung to the staircase. He led me into a small room lined with filing cabinets and old black and white photos of Traverse Bay. He placed a folder in front of me. The first page had my name on it. No co-signers, no successors, just me. The numbers stared back like something too big to absorb. Douglas had planned for this moment. Not if, but when. Greg slid another paper toward me. A copy of a check dated 3 years ago. $15,000. Paid to a roofing contractor. Signed in my name. Only I had never written that check. The signature was close, but not mine. Greg said Douglas noticed it right away. He never accused Sean or Bethany directly. He didn't want to create war. Instead, he started separating everything. Slowly, quietly, protecting me while I kept trusting them. The trust, Greg explained, couldn't be touched by anyone else. It was locked from the inside out. There was also a note. Douglas had told Greg to wait until the moment felt right. Until something didn't feel quite normal in the family anymore. I told him the moment had come and gone. Greg nodded gently. That night I didn't sleep much. I sat in the study folder, still open, rereading Douglas's handwriting at the bottom of one page. You deserve a future no one can steal. The next morning, just past 9, I heard a knock on the front door. Through the window, I saw Sean's car in the driveway. Bethany stayed in the passenger seat face down in her phone. Sean smiled soft and careful like he was testing the temperature of the air. He said they were worried about me. That maybe I could use some help sorting through Dad's papers, bank stuff, financial bits that might feel overwhelming. I told him I appreciated the offer. Then I stepped aside and let the quiet answer for me. He stepped just inside the entryway, eyes scanning the room like he was looking for something. I asked why they hadn't called on Christmas. He said things got busy and Bethany's mother had insisted. That it wasn't personal. I said it felt personal when a courier delivered a note instead of a phone call. He looked down, said they meant to follow up, that the timing just got away from them. Then he brought up the cabin, asked if I needed help checking on the plumbing, or seeing if it could be listed for rental during summer months. That was when I knew. He didn't come to help. He came to check what I knew. I walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up a folder. I handed it to him without a word. Inside was a copy of the trust document and a notarized statement from my doctor affirming my cognitive health. He flipped through it slowly. His jaw tightened. I said Douglas didn't leave me helpless, that he left me prepared. I told him I knew about the check, the emails, the pressure he had put on Greg behind my back. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. I said this wasn't about blame. This was about boundaries. And I was drawing mine with ink thick enough to last. He said they only wanted to help. I said they had a strange way of showing it. He glanced toward the door, then asked if Bethany could come in. I told him no. Not today. Maybe not for a while. As he stepped back outside, I looked him in the eye. I said I wasn't angry. I was just finally awake. And sometimes waking up changes everything. He walked to the car without another word. Bethany never looked up. They pulled out of the driveway and didn't turn back. I stood there at the threshold, not triumphant, not shaking, just still. The folder rested against my palm like a shield I never wanted but now understood. Douglas had seen the tide shifting long before I did. He didn't leave me wealth. He left me wisdom. And for the first time since he died, I didn't feel like someone's leftover. I felt like someone with a future, one I would now protect. The next Christmas came quietly like snow on pine needles. Not loud, not grand, just steady and sure. This time I started planning early. Not for Sean, not for Bethany. I sent out handwritten invitations in early November, the kind with silver stars on the edges. I mailed a few to women from my widows group at church. I dropped one off for Marcy, who works the front desk at the clinic and always remembers how I take my tea. I handed another to Jordan, a 17-year-old who paints murals at the youth center, and once shoveled my walk without being asked. They all said yes, no hesitation, just a smile and a, "We'll be there." I spent Christmas morning at the cabin rolling out dough for biscuits and humming along to the radio. The little tree in the corner sparkled with ornaments made from yarn paper and string. Nothing fancy, but each one had a story. A crooked star from Marcy's granddaughter. A snowman made of cotton balls Jordan glued together on a napkin. A garland of popcorn and cranberries that took 3 evenings to finish. At 3 o'clock the first knock came. Then another. The house filled fast. Laughter spilled out of the kitchen. Pans clanged. Someone dropped a ladle and just laughed instead of apologizing. I didn't even flinch. Marcy brought sweet potatoes baked with pecans and brown sugar. Jordan helped me carry the ham to the table. Ruth from the quilting club told a story about her high school sweetheart that made everyone blush and cheer. The room buzzed with warmth, not just from the food, but from the way everyone leaned in to listen, to help, to belong. At some point, someone turned on a crackly old version of Silent Night. We sang. off-key too loud and entirely without shame. Plates clinked, glasses raised, candles flickered without ceremony. It was messy, but real. Just before dessert, I saw the envelope tucked behind the flower vase. No return address, just my name in Sean's handwriting. Inside a card with gold snowflakes and a single line. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Hope you're doing well. Sean and Bethany." There was no apology, no explanation, no invitation. I read it twice, then set it back inside the envelope and placed it in the drawer beside the stove. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad. Just clear. Later, after everyone had gone, I stood at the sink washing dishes while the fire popped softly in the next room. The kitchen smelled like pie crust and cloves. The silence was full, not empty. I walked outside with a glass of wine and wrapped myself in the thick blue blanket Douglas had once bought for a camping trip we never took. The sky had faded to soft gold and lavender. The last of the daylight slid behind the hills. My breath made tiny clouds. I rocked slowly on the porch swing and listened to the leftover laughter echo faintly through the door. They didn't come. But I didn't wait this time. I chose people who chose me back. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about building something new with the pieces I still had. Douglas had said it once when the power went out during a storm. Home isn't who remembers your birthday. It's who shows up with a flashlight when the lights go out. This year they showed up, and that made all the difference.